Hello, this is David Hosey from Hosey Consulting and Training again. Today we're going over a long-term review of the Kriss Vector in 45 ACP. So, it's a 45 AC pistol caliber carbine. This is an SBR condition. This is a Kriss, not a Kriss, a Sonsico Osprey can on it. So it folds down pretty small organically, and it's a blowback system where it goes down and vectors into here, and that pushes the barrel down instead of rising it up and recoil. You'll see some bouncing around on the back here, but the sight stays pretty flat as it goes along. It takes Glock magazines. It'll take Glock 21, or these have the 30 round extension on them. I mostly run them to 28 or less for just reliability issues. I've had this gun for, well, 13 years is when I bought it, but Form 4s and the ATF, I didn't get really to the spring of 2011 when I started using it. And this went into almost right away night hunting, ranch gun, and home defense. And only suppressed gun that I had at the time, and this is before 300 blackout. So within that, it worked fairly well, and I use it for a lot of varmint hunting, which might be an odd thing, but I've killed 30 to 40 varmints with this. But imperfections in here. Again, if you're looking for something that's going to praise this gun and say it has no malfunctions or is accurate, this is not the video. This thing has malfunctions. It is not accurate. It has a number of imperfections. But I've been able to do a lot with this, really grow as a shooter, a hunter, and just a general gun guy with this gun and my experience with it and making an imperfect gun work. So we'll go in and we'll start talking about that, but one more time I'll shoot some more in this magazine here. And notice how the back of this will bounce around, but the front here will stay a little flat. It's kind of a funny thing. You think it'd be a teeter-totter, but it's not. Hey, malfunction. And a double feed at that. We'll get into that later. Yeah, just a flat gun, but jarring. So what is this? This is a Kriss Vector in 45 ACP. It's a semi-automatic submachine gun or pistol caliber carbine. Here, let me clear it out first. Lock it open. Bolt release and open is here. I could just put the bolt back forward. It's been around for roughly 20 years. First started seeing this, if you want to go back, like on the Discovery Channel when it was cool, with future weapons, like 20 years ago, very early, War on Terror. It's been in a lot of video games. It became the cool guy weapon in that. Movies, the remake of Total Recall, The Expanse, saw a lot of it. Not a lot of as much military experience, but a lot of media exposure. So it's been around for about 20 years in various forms. It's gone into a number of iterations. At first it was only in 45 ACP. They now have it in 49mm, 10mm, and it's gone through several iterations and changes over. Those have all been good improvements. I've got friends that have the improved ones after they saw mine, and even in its problems with some of the more recent versions, they've gotten much more reliable and less otherwise problems with it. So the basics of this is it has a 5-inch barrel here, a blowback action that's actually down at this level, and then instead of going back like this, it recoils down like that, which instead of the recoil going up like this, it keeps it more flatter and kind of holds it down. There'll still be some bouncing, and it is a visceral, almost violent experience on the recoil on this. It is not as bad as some other 45 ACP blowback guns. I've got a little bit with the Max series, those little boxy things, and also with a lot more with H&K's USC and UMP, really the USC. And that was a much more hard recoiling gun. Compared to, say, an MP5 here, it is much more recoil, but that's German space magic in this thing. they were delayed in 9mm compared to 45. And also this is the base gun that I've got a lot of crap strapped onto it, is actually a fairly lightweight system. So that's basically what it is. It takes either a 13 round Glock 21 magazines or 31 or 30 round with extension ones. They were the ones that originally made the extension on this. I'm sure there's some other aftermarket ones, but these are the only ones I've tried with it. So other particulars to it, we'll go from tip to butt here. So I bought with it at the time a 45 Osprey can, silencer co in 45 Osprey in 45. This has been a fairly good can for it. It's a good can. It's a good suppressor, especially with wet. I didn't do any demonstrations with that. It makes this thing even more gunked up wet. It's much better on pistols. It's a quieter can. I get some port pop out of it with this. That's just an issue with it. But I shot a lot of varmints at night. I've only had one time where someone heard me at the distance, and that was summer with the window open. Going on back, ejection port here. This is where the malfunctions will be, and sometimes the bolts be working back and forth and lube, especially when I'm running this can on it. I put a vertical foregrip on this, and then a light here. A lot of this is way back to yesteryear. This is a Surefire light that is, believe it or not, incandescent 60 lumens with an IR filter on it. I used to use it for the IR filter for IR illumination sub 50 yards on dark nights. I have, before you could get civilian legal lasers, this is a Hayes Research Kit laser. Kind of a blob, hard to adjust, super bright. If you want to burn your retina out, this is the tool to do it with. And no coaxial laser with it, so it's hard to zero. But once you get it down, it works and it holds zero. Pop-up iron sights that came with it, they work fairly well. Going along this top rail, which as you notice is a pretty good bore hold on this between my optic and my bore here. It's like pushing 4 inches. It makes the PS90 look good. If you want to trip back to yesterday, this is a Trigicon Tri-Power, where it's fiber optic tritium and ridiculously short battery life, battery backup, and an old LaRue aim point mount. Has an ambidextrous safety here. One advantage of the safety thought is I can slowly move it and be quiet. That works on how this has been used as a hunting gun and a lot of the usage on it. Trigger here is, forward here, is spongy and break. Newer ones are better. I'm not going to disassemble this today, but the hammer here is actually upside down on how it goes to the bolt. So the hammer goes this way, and it's upside down to where the bolt and firing pin is here. It's kind of a weird setup, but it works. Folding stock, there's been a whole bunch of different stock options that have gone with this before. I bought this as an SBR Form 4, so it came with this. This is kind of the classic one again you see in the video games. Put an old sling, I think I got off of the Ares Armor if you want to go back to yesteryear. A lot of this is back to yesteryear. There were where you could attach side rails into this. The problem with them is when you put them on in, the plastic stripped out and the rails did not really hold well. So I put back in the holding nuts and I've left it there. This plastic on it was soft. That's just a complete failure point. You really have an upper and lower rail on this. The newer ones have different quad rails and different versions that are much better. There's a reason why they went to that. The original one has flaws. Magazine release is right here, which is kind of a funny thing, in that I've got to push it with my thumb and pull it back down. It's almost a European style where you have to retain it encourages you to retain the magazine. Also, if you grab onto here, you can sometimes loosen the magazine and have it fall out. That's why the vertical foregrip on here is, and a lot of people did these with pistols with braces, and they complained for that problem. It's never was intended to really be gripped back here. I thought they've got a little bit of molding for it. This gun has to be, is best run with a vertical foregrip. So that's the basics of it, my experience with it, and why I got it. So my experience in this really goes back to what I bought it for. Only had so much money when I got out, and I was putting other things. Well, there was a scar in there as well, so some more expensive things. But for SBRs, my experience in that was the PS90, which you've seen a review of, this and this can. And this also works as a pistol can for a couple of my pistols. My extent with this goes back to some of my experience in combat, where on raids, we'd want something quiet at the beginning. Sentry removal, but really a hush puppy. And before the autistics go in, a hush puppy is a such and such gun used in the Vietnam War. Something that would stop dogs, that would alert us going into a blank head compound. Insert your name, profane word of choice in the blank. And we never were able to get a suppressor, and being in conventional forces, we didn't get as many cool things. But it was always a need I felt in my mind, even though we solved it with tactics in country. So I wanted a suppressed gun that would be able to let me start a fight in a certain way, or just be sneaky and stuff. That's also in part why this is painted, because it doesn't entirely look like a gun. When you put this all in, it looks like a sci-fi prop gun, which has been used so much. It has a camouflage to this. If I'm wearing multicam, this thing blends on in, and you don't know, like, what the heck is that? It takes a second or two to register that it's a gun. You can see some of my other videos. This is a purposeful thing and gives you a bit of an advantage in a fight. I also, when I got out, I did a lot of night work when I was in PVS 7s and PVS 14s, and got on a rural property and had coyote issues, killing livestock, causing problems for the neighbors and extended family. So I started coyote hunting, but I did a little bit with 5.56 or 308. That's a little bit loud at 3 in the morning, irritating to the neighbors. So I started using this as a suppressed hunting weapon. And you think 45 ACP, most people think coyote hunting is a flat shooting round, not an arc. What I did was almost like a bow hunting thing. I got really close to things. I'd find a trail where they were, or worked really quiet. And this taught me how to be really quiet, and that's why the suppressor being very quiet, moving it. And just a close-in gun. And I learned a lot with it. I got like 30, 40 varmints with it. And the experience with that, I got better usage of learning how to use IR lasers that I in service, built on my skill set from there, built on my hunting skill set of being quiet, paying attention to the wind, and understanding how animals behave and what they do with just a PVS 14, old cheap thermal. And this, with this Hayes research, it's just this blob that was hard to aim. Once I got it dialed in, it stayed there. This thing worked, and it killed a lot of animals for me. It shoots 45 jacketed hollow point. I used some Winchester Ranger and Federal HST is most of what I've used for fighting, killing loads for this. Again, lots of dead animals. It wounds like a pistol caliber. It's nothing special than over a normal 5 ACP, not a rifle caliber. But it worked, and sometimes things would require an extra round or two, or sometimes cats would run off after I got shot because I wasn't perfect, but that was me learning the experience with it. And I was able to do a lot of work with this and build a lot of skills up. I maintained skills so I didn't get rusty. I got sick and my body kind of changed. I could still hobble around the farm with this short range gun and really refine my skills. And that may sound like you could do with anything. And I've got a fantastic tool in it, in this Sig Virtus 300 Black. I can see the review of that. This is a so much better tool than this, and we'll go into its failure points. But it's all I had at the time, and this, even with all the add-ons, is cheaper than this base gun. So, imperfect gun and kind of an odd varmint gun, but I've done a lot with it. Now we're going to talk about the failure points. First failure point is going to be accuracy. So I grew with this gun so much, but I had lots of frustrations and problems with it as well. Accuracy and reliability. And the reliability we'll go into a little bit, but the accuracy is the barrel and the sighting system are two different parts of the gun for receivers. I'll take this apart here. It has these push pins. They're kind of HK-like. Push the one out. I'm not going to completely disassemble the gun. I'm just going to pull these three out so I can separate the upper and lower. This is that lower with that vector system that goes down. But this is the barrel. This is where it shoots. This is my sighting system with my irons, optic, and IR laser up here. They fit in here with these push pins, but there's a little bit of wobble in it. And if I can put pressure on this, like I really bear down like I will in a long range gun behind a bench and kind of push it into a sandbag, my groups will open up huge. If I let it loose, they'll shoot a little bit tighter on that. Still about a 6 MOA gun, but for sub 50 yards hunting it did okay. So we're going to go to, let me think here, I filmed it back in August of 2022, so 15 months ago. Today you could actually see the mud stains where I did the long range shooting before this that you'll see later in the video. But I'm going to give you a video of this on a bench with me holding it tight and me not on a bench holding it loose, and what the groups are. So, having done the SIG's Virtus TAC Ops and 300 Blackout, this has a worse trigger, worse recoil, and I don't think the accuracy is better. But it does have its virtues. We'll talk about those in a bit. So this is my group. This is a previous group. This is looking like butt shock accuracy. I'm debating whether the bench is doing something and I'm going to shoot offhand and see what happens. So this is farther shot up, but we got here, here, and here with those last three shots. That upper and lower have that difference in the aiming system on the upper and the barrel on the lower. I think applying pressure to the lower will throw off point of impact considerably. I was bouncing around. The up and down I think is on me. I'll get a little bit more right, but this just shows the consistent problems I've had with this gun the whole time. That all aside, is the ironic thing is I've killed 30 odd varmints with the thing, but it was all, say, at 30 yards, not 50 yards. And this, if you superimpose it, say, on a coyote body, works fine even at 50. And I've stretched it maybe 70, 80 yards, but all of it's been a close-in thing. Really, the gun is close in, and that inherent inaccuracies of it, and hanging that suppressor on it with that upper and lower may cause some of those inaccuracies otherwise. Even at this, it's maybe a 6 MOA gun at best, at least in my experience with that ammo. So next problem, once I figured out how to hold this loose, it works well, and there's also occasional problems retaining zero when I take the suppressor on and off, so I kind of have to re-zero with that. But the reliability issues is double feeds in here and bolt speed. And I lubed it for the longest time with COP. I do it for almost all my guns except for M1 Garands and M14s and some YAKs. And I was lubing this with COP and I kept getting more and more failures. Last August, I'll show you a series of failures while I was doing some shooting drills with this. And here, I've got a jam going on. I guess I call that a stovepipe. Now, I've got to lock it back open because it wants to double feed on me. Top round there is doing that, so drop that round, put it back up, fold forward again. So, back to regular feeding. Cam again. Double feed. Okay.
Good.
Try that again. Keep flowing.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do it going back here. You can keep that ejection just a little on the weak side if you're watching that. And empty. Again, I've got the back Holt oven has kind of broken off on me. So I was reading some spots online where they were talking about moving with grease, doing better on reliability. And I started this year really using Tetra gun grease. And it's actually improved a lot better. You see some malfunctions in some of the shooting today. That's after about 200 rounds. And again, this is a kind of, since it's a blowback gun and this suppressor on here, it gets pretty filthy. So at this point, I'm thinking about 200 rounds, I have to clean it and use with the grease. I wouldn't get that reliability of 200 rounds in between failures with the CLP. You could see what was going on with the other one. It was just frustration central. Initially, it didn't have as many problems. That might be the buff. They got a small buffer inside here that caused issues. I'm not entirely sure, but the grease has gotten it better, and I'm just going to have to grease this up more often. Pretty much after every range trip, clean it down and grease it. It's a dirty gun to clean, and grease makes it a little worse, but that's going to have to live with it. Comparison to other guns. And I talked about this, me getting this originally went back into my experience in Iraq and issues. So for pistol caliber carbines, an MP5 that it's a 9mm is a much better gun. It just feels so much more well made. It's much more reliable, and you can suppress it fairly well. But it's only 9mm, so you get 147, maybe 150 grains compared to 45, which is inherently subsonic. And then 300 Blackout, the Sig Virtus. The TAC Ops version. I love this gun. It is just so awesome. Quite reliable, very, very quiet. Much more quiet gun with this, but it's got a gigantic can on here. If I would be transported into Iraq and guns that I could take back there or go back in time, I take the MP5 or the Sig Virtus. If I want to do a silent problem right now, I take the Sig Virtus. Or I do varmint hunting at night, I still do that. A lot of times I'll do 223 and just still have the supersonic crack, and my neighbors are learning to live with that. But if I really want to be quiet, like on the edge of the property, I'm working on about a square mile here. But on the edge, I'm shooting something not at them, but close, or make noise to their house. The Sig Virtus makes it. But I'm not getting rid of the gun. One, again, I painted it. Two, I just got this experience with it, nostalgia, and it can work. And I guess that's kind of making an imperfect gun work. Long range accuracy, we'll show a little bit of that, where I did some earlier shooting today. So here at 100 yards, I can put them in the chest, but I'm doing about a target form of the chest and head above it to make the impact. 100 yards, it's practical. I'm not really sucking this in and holding it. I'm holding the gun rather loose because that fit between upper and lower to make this work. Aiming straight on like I can with a 9mm or even a 300 Blackout, this drops considerably quicker. Just because of the lower velocity, and those big fat 45 rounds just don't have a lot of ballistic coefficient. They got more like the ballistic coefficient of a rock. It's closer to that 50 Beowulf, but with half the velocity. Anyway, we'll try a touch further on back. and see if we can connect there. But this is really the limits of this. My other subguns you've seen, MP5 I've done out to 300. And some ridiculous stuff with that SIG 300 blackout Virtus. But this, it's just not quite that. Long range accuracy is not what this thing shines at. So we're closer to 150 here. And I've got to be really careful how I hold the gun and kind of load the weight on it for my accuracy. But got to go real light. And there I'm missing. There we go. And some of this, if I pull it in really tight, you can see how I'm bending the stock here. I'll get hits several feet away, but if I go low, I load up lows, and then again, or not. Just my accuracy starts falling apart even at 150 yards here. And if I apply pressure with the separation of the lower receiver where the barrel is and the sighting system up top here, you can even see how it'll kind of flex a little bit if I really hold it in tight and drive it in. I got to hold it neutral and loose. And when I was doing that, my misses were just me getting that huge arc, getting the hold on it. Even if I'm prone, it's almost more I get in a tendency to tighten up on the rifle or subgun here. But that can really slow it down, and that's just one of its limitations. Again, this whole thing, you got to know its limits and work within that. If you do that, it works well, but it's not going to be as accurate as a lot of its competitors. So you can see at 100 yards, I can hit fairly well as long as I figure my holdover. 150, it starts breaking down. There was some of that where I was really pulling back, and that upper and lower, it really started going. Off camera, when we were filming in between, I was getting spots where I was hitting 6 feet off to the side. We could see the splash up because the ground is so super saturated. We had like a half foot the last week. And that was this torque between the upper and lower. When I got it loose, I could hit fairly well as I held, but it's still about a 6 MOA gun. So how's my experience in that worked out? I think I've killed a coyote maybe 60, 70 yards with it. Is the furthest I've killed one. Most of the other stuff has been sub 50 yards. The IR illuminator and this really old incandescent with a IR filter on it. In that range, it works. And it's quiet. Is it the best gun ever? No. Has my example been perfectly reliable? No. Is it my reliable been laser accurate? Definitively no. This thing, I can do 1 MOA with the subsonic stuff and be so much more confident distance. 200 yards with this with subsonics are so much easier. Part of that is 300 blackout and better ballistic coefficient compared to 45 ACP. I'm not selling the gun. I got nostalgia in it. It works as if somehow this isn't working or whatnot like that, or a handout gun. It works. You just got to have lots of Tetra grease around, lube it up, and be aware of its issues. Other things on it, I got this 3 magazine pouch by the Vest guy. Just kind of a fighting load up for it. I went into this thing's harm's way, confronting trespassers a couple times. It had been well lubed up, and I felt for the first 10 rounds I probably wouldn't jam up on me. That's not a ringing endorsement. Newer models are better. I haven't heard as many complaints in it, but it's not a perfect system. This upper, lower, and fit, and the wobble in it, no matter how well you do that with newer improvements, that's a fundamental flaw in it. The jamming on it seems to be a fundamental issue compared to the reliability of the MP5 or other blowback guns. In 9mm, I would take something else. In 45 ACP, I'd probably go with this. I've been tempted for years to buy a 10mm version. Just because when you got the can off this, it is a handy little gun, and 10mm, and that recoil wouldn't make you go up and down. So would I recommend it? If you want that experience and look for it, because cool is kind of a thing, this is, let me get this up, it's such a cool gun. I used to use it for entertainment, for clients. Get it wet for suppressors in 10 rounds, and it would sound like a nail gun. And it worked pretty well, and in 10 rounds it wouldn't jam on me. So it would ruin the demonstration thing when freshly lubed. But if you got any questions, comments, your experience on it, total round count, it's not nearly as high as some of my other guns. I'm thinking 3,000 rounds or less. But varmint count, this and my LWRC are probably the highest ones I've killed things with. That I do very different hunting. The LWRC I generally shoot a lot further, and it's a much flatter gun and much more accurate than this. But I made it work, and that's really a kind of a lessons learned on this that goes beyond the gun itself. If you've got an imperfect system, put the time in with it. Know its strengths and weaknesses and what you can do with it, and you'd be really surprised. You don't think a pistol caliber carbine's a varmint hunting gun, let alone a 45. But that inherent subsonic ability before a 300 blackout, it worked well for me. And you can make imperfect guns work and really learn their limitations and learn to work within them. Any questions about this? You want to see this as for rental and train with me? Give me in the contacts or turn me otherwise. Thank you for your time and consideration. Good day.